In the previous episode, we have seen how to build the project with the Webpack, but we did not configure .env libraries while building the project. So in this episode, we're going to see how to configure .env while building the project with Webpack and see how we can generate artifacts for specific environments. If you look at this diagram, we have generated api.bundle.js in the previous episode without any environment specific variables. The problem with this, if you take that bundle and if you deploy into different environments, all the environments will have same environment specific variables. That means every environment such as development, test, production, every environment will have the same port, which is 4000 or any port that you specify by default, and also we'll have the same database connection URL. So which is a problem. So that's why we need to configure .env library while building the Webpack. If you look at this, while building the project, we have to inject environment specific variables and it produces an artifact whatever the environment you specify. So for example, if you build the project with dev-webpack.config.js, it builds the artifact for development. If you build the project with production webpack.config.js, it builds the artifact with production variables so that the same artifact can be deployed in different environments. So this can be achieved in different ways. Let's get started. Okay, this is where we left in the previous episode. We have this webpack.config.js, and when we run this, when we build the project with npm run build, it builds the artifact under dist folder, and when you run the application, it actually takes the default port and default connection URL. So if you look at this, it is running on the port 3000. So, but in the .env file, we can see the port 4000. So basically, it is actually taking the port 3000, which is the default one, if there is no port present in the process.env object. And also, if you look at the dp-config.js, we have a default MongoDB connection string. So let's remove these default values and let's build the project again and see whether it works or not. We have built the project now, and we can see the port is undefined and environment is undefined now, because the values are not coming from .env, and also there are no default values defined for the port. So that's why we have to configure, we have to install another library, which is .env plugin. We can install this plugin first and then add this plugin to webpack.config.js. Let's copy this command and run this command in our terminal so that this package is installed and gets added to the dev dependencies object. Now the package is installed, and let's copy the file, import file first, import line first, and paste it in the webpack.config.js. And add this line to the plugins array. So we have already one plugin, which is copy plugin. So let's add .env plugin to this array. Since we have plugin now, let's build the project and test it out. So even now the port is undefined and environment is also undefined. So that's because, as you see, the environment.env files are under environment section. So if unless there is a file called .env in the same path, you have to give that particular path with path with the path key actually. So let's give a actual path in the configuration object. Let's create an object. Let's pass that object to the .env. So the correct path is environments/.env. So now we have given the correct path, and it should take the .env file when we build the application now. Now the application is running on port 4000, which is the port that is defined in .env file, and even the application is also working. So that is how we should give or we should configure .env while building the Webpack. But there is a problem here. We have different environment files and we have only one webpack.config.js here. And there are different ways we can create or generate different artifacts for different environments. So for now, let's create another file called webpack.dev-config.js and copy the whole thing and copy another file which is webpack.dev-config.js. You can name whatever you want. Since we have environments dev, test, and production, it's appropriate to name these files based on the environments. And go to this webpack dev-config.js and paste the whole thing there. Before that, let's create all the files, all the webpack config files. And let's rename this to test. Okay, now we have defined three webpack config.js for different environments, dev, test, and production respectively. Now, so we have to change these environment files that we are passing to the .env library. So for production, let's change that to env.prod. And for dev, it's .env.dev. And we have to add some scripts here as well. Since we are building, we are building artifacts with the different webpack config.js files, so we have to add different scripts here for each environment. Since we have webpack config.js files with the different names, we have to pass that particular name with config flag. So for dev, it's webpack dev config.js. For test, it is webpack test config.js. And for production, it is webpack prod config.js. So right now all we need to run this command so that appropriate webpack.config.js will be passed to the webpack command and the artifact will be built by taking the appropriate environment variables or environment file. So we just built with dev config file. Let's run the code and see. So as you can see, we can see the port 5001 and also environment development. So it took the environment file, development environment file. And let's test it out by changing the port here, 5001. Yep, it's working. And let's do the same thing with test. And it seems the port is undefined. Let's see what's wrong with the test config.js. Let's open webpack test config.js. Oh, it seems .env is missing here. Let's put .env and let's build the project again. So as you can see, the port 6000 and the environment test. And also let's build the production in the same way. npm run build prod. Now we run the artifact. We can see the port 7001 and the environment production. Let's test it out. Yep, it's working fine. And this is one way of having or building the API for different environments with the different webpack config.js files. As you can see, we have to maintain multiple config files, and it is very difficult to maintain as we have more environments. So instead of that, there is another way of building this with cross environment. You can pass node environment variable to the webpack config.js so that you don't have to maintain multiple config.js files for each environment. So with cross env, we are passing node environment to the webpack command. So since we are using only webpack command, it actually takes webpack config.js by default. And for each script, we have to pass specific environment. So there are 3 environments. We have added 3 scripts. Let's copy this and paste it here. And based on the node env variable, we can actually create a path, and we can just pass that environment file path to the path variable in the configuration object of .env. Let's clear this and let's build this one. Let's build for dev first. As you can see, the dev is working fine. So it is running on port 5001 and the environment is development, and it is taking those variables from dev.env. In the same way, let's build for other environments and test it out. Test is working fine. It is taking the port 6000 and environment is test. Let's run the production build and let's okay, this is also working fine. So let's create a Webpack folder and move all these Webpack related files to that particular folder. In that way, it will be very easy to maintain the application. You don't want to see multiple webpack.config.js files on your root folder. Let's move all this to Webpack folder. Since we have moved all these files to Webpack folder, we can actually change the scripts as well. And we no longer have this webpack.config.js file at the root location, so we have to pass config flag. And one more thing we need to change is, I believe, since all these config files are moved to Webpack folder, all the relative paths will be different now. If you go to webpack.config.js, the relative path of index.html and the relative path of dist folder, all these will change. We have to change all this. In the same way, let's change the dist folder as well. Even the entry file should be different and the output file should be different. Since we are using path.resolve for all the entries, I think we have to use path.resolve to the entry as well. Let's change that to index.js, just index.js, and see whether it works or not. If it doesn't work, we have to use path.resolve there. Yeah, it's not working. So let's use path.resolve for the index.js as well. So it is very important to have these files updated when we move any files, because this might be a simple change, but it will affect a lot of things. Now it's working. So we have built the production build, and as you can see, the port is 7001 and the environment is production. Let's test all the builds to make sure everything is working fine. So even though we are using webpack.config.js, let's change all these relative paths in other files as well, because right now we have seen two ways of injecting environment variables to webpack.config.js while building the project. But in the first method, we have used we have used one webpack config.js for each environment. For example, if we have 5 environments, we need to use 5 webpack config.js files. There is a merge plugin. You can use merge plugin where you can maintain one base webpack config.js, and you can take the base webpack config.js and you can just merge with other webpack config.js files, even though you have to maintain lot of webpack config.js files, as if your environments are more than 3 or 4. So I think this is the second way of passing node environment variable to the webpack command will be easier to maintain, because all we need to do is we need to maintain only one webpack config.js and pass that particular environment variable to that webpack command. That way all we need to change that script. You don't have to maintain multiple environment files. So you can choose either way, and it doesn't matter. It's up to you, and it entirely depends on the configuration that you want to use for your application. And for now let's change all the relative paths in all the webpack config.js files.